Hi, everyone. I'm Father Michael Stalla, the spiritual director for Hope's Garden, and today we're talking about desire. So, in our understanding of the desire within our hearts, sometimes we think of dying to self as being a spirituality of letting go of our own desires and our hopes. And to a certain extent, that can be true, where we say, for the sake of something greater, I will let go of this which I consider lesser. And that can be a dying to self when you're doing some sort of giving up of your creature comforts or even some of your dreams for the sake of accomplishing God's dreams. However, we believe that deep within your desire, on the deepest level, what you really truly desire was placed there by God. St. Ignatius of Loyola would do an extensive study into his own desires and kind of came up with a formula of understanding that my true desire was rooted in being responded to by God, because God placed that desire there, not to be a cruel God to hold back my fulfillment, but so that I would seek God, the giver of all good gifts. So in his way of thinking about it, he first desired to be a great warrior who would go out onto the battlefield and put fear into his enemies. But then he started reading about these saints, and they seemed very courageous, and they seemed really amazing what they were able to accomplish and how they were shaping the world. And so he found himself actually kind of changing from desiring the one thing, which had to do with greatness, and now desiring another kind of greatness. And so he's finding that deep down in his desire was his desire to be great. But the further that he went into that, the more he realized he wanted to be humble, great in the sense of the last shall be first. And so now he starts to imitate the saints and enter into humility because he feels this is the road to greatness. And then he finds, actually, I'm not really looking for greatness in the worldly way of thinking of greatness. I'm really looking for the greatest in the kingdom. I'm looking to be holy. So the more that he purifies his desire, the more he gets deeper into what he really is looking for, the more he realizes this is God's plan for him. And this helps him on his path of development, setting his own goals, and becoming more fully satisfied with the life that God has given him, and able to shed from himself the things that at one time or another he thought was his desires. But it turned out that's not really what I wanted. I put it this way: for a little baby, a child, they might be reaching for hot sauce on the table, and I might push that baby's hand away. The baby might get really angry. Why is the baby getting angry? Because they want this object, but they don't really want that object. They think they want this object. They think that that object is filled with something good or sweet. They don't realize that it's spicy and hot and will hurt their little mouths. So if they really understood what their desire was, they would not desire the things that harm them. They would only desire the things that really please them. And so knowing what our true desire is will help us to find our way to the giver of all good gifts. Another way to think about it is if you say, I want to win the lottery. Well, you don't actually want to win the lottery. You want the money. I mean, it's one thing to win the lottery, and let's say you die tomorrow before you even collect the ticket. What good is that? So I don't really want to just win the lottery. I want to have the money. Well, not just that. I mean, I could give you the money and have it locked up in a safe that you could never access. I want to buy the things that money gets. Well, not just the things. I want to use that money to influence other people, to do great things, to bring my dreams into fruition, to have a sense of security. I want to make the world a better place. I want my life to be easier. All of these things are getting deeper and deeper into what is your true desire. And it turns out what your truest desire is can only be given to you in heaven. Yet here on earth, we can already start to sense how it is that my life has meaning, how it is that my desires were placed there by God. So often we live around people that will try to tell us what we desire, and they'll use it against us often, that you're trying to do this, you really want to do this, you are being self-centered. We have to be very careful not to be self-centered. That's true. Other people should not be a means to an end. We shouldn't use people or manipulate them to get what we think we want. But instead, we're saying what I really want will not include manipulating people. Perhaps it includes working with people. Perhaps it's being a true family. Perhaps it's finding true love. Perhaps it's having the freedom to open up our hearts to each other without judgment. You can see in that sense, other people could be involved in your deepest desire, but not necessarily or definitely not to the expense of the other person. And so other people might start to use us and try to manipulate us to get their ends, to get their desires. But if we turn around and say, well, I have desires too, they'll use it against us. You can't allow that to happen. That is not acceptable. Going deep inside of our desires is to look for God. What is God asking me to do with my life? And it's for this reason that if we try to live like a saint that God was not asking us to be like, you might find it to be very unsatisfying. If you find yourself trying to live as a hermit in a cave because you heard of other saints doing that, and you might say, this is not satisfying at all, I would say that's a good indication that God didn't want you to live as a hermit. So to be able to be sensitive enough to say, my desires matter, but I'm still trying to understand them more fully, and to find the satisfaction of my desires deeply in God. And so this leads me in another direction without allowing others to somehow overwrite all of my desires, or to make me even feel guilty that I have desires. They were placed there by God for a purpose, and our true desire is to discover the meaning of our desire.